Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special Finance Committee meeting today, March 22nd, 21st, March 22nd, 21st, 2023.
Keep trying.
Finally got it right. If I said it enough, I'd get it right. First, this Finance Committee meeting is for the presentation of our Housing Our Future plan. This is a presentation, not a public hearing about this, but it is a presentation about this plan. And we will take the information that we receive and then we'll move forward with it at a later date. First, I'd like to recognize Justin Carney from the Development Strategies by Zoom. And y'all out there, you may not know it, but we have TVs, we have cameras we can see down here, and as y'all have these. So we see the same thing down here that you see up there. So we really are paying attention if you don't see us looking back there. And I'd also like to recognize Josh Dix, Housing Steering Committee Chair. Are we ready to go, Mr. Carney?
Absolutely, Chairman. I'm ready when you are.
Who's going to start? Is Josh going to
I
start?
think Mr. Carney will start.
Okay, Mr. Carney, would you begin?
Okay, you bet. I will. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well, just before I share screen, I just wanted to be on the screen for just a moment to thank you all for having this special meetings for us to discuss the Housing Our Future plan. It's been a year plus in the making. We've had a lot of great and thoughtful analysis and community conversations and research that has gone into this, and I'm very excited to share it with you all. And with that as a little bit of a preamble, let me share screen here, and we'll get going. So before I jump into the plan, I wanted to just take a quick moment to kind of remind everybody about where we started with this planning effort. Some of you who were here may recall that this was probably the first, one of the very first slides that we shared with you all, really as a way to kind of let you and the Charleston County community know how we as a company and the planning team that was behind this effort, how we view housing and you know, the understanding that housing really does impact everything in the community. And it was really our way of introducing the vital importance of housing. So yes, we're going to talk about housing, and obviously, but just with an understanding that it is really so much more than that. And I think the community conversations we had with stakeholders, with the community, with you all, as we developed this, really, I think people recognized and intuited that housing does impact our communities, our families, our households in a variety of ways. And I think that bears out into the planning document that we created. So, you know, we started this conversation, you know, with the community saying, you know, what is Housing Our Future? What is this document that we've created? And one of the ways that we've been talking about it is in this really succinct phrase right here: Charleston County's first comprehensive plan for housing and housing affordability. And this was the way that we introduced the plan and the planning process to stakeholders and community residents, to business leaders. Whenever we were having a conversation, this is how we characterized it. And while it's a short, concise phrase, there's really a lot packed into this. And I just want to take a second to kind of give some perspective to those of you who might be, you know, new to this whole Housing Our Future planning process, or have heard me speaking for the first time. You know, the Charleston County's first comprehensive plan, that Charleston County's, yes, it is a document for Charleston County government. It is a policy guide for government officials and staff to understand how to allocate resources and programs and investments to promote housing. But it's also Charleston County's plan, the geography, the community of Charleston County, and looking at this as a way to say that this isn't just for county government, but it's for everyone to find a way and a place to kind of plug in to advancing housing in the county and in the community. It's a comprehensive plan. So by that nature, what we're talking about here is it is a comprehensive look at housing, the housing stock that exists now, housing stock and demand that we need to meet in the future, and how do we produce more housing to do that. But it's also looking at the services, the ecosystem. We use that phrase a lot, the community development ecosystem. That's the government agencies, the local government, municipal agencies. It is developers, nonprofits, service providers, financial institutions, philanthropic organizations, large employers and businesses, all of which have a role in advancing an equitable and stable housing future. And so it's looking at that in a very comprehensive way, not just about the stock, but the people that are trying to make an improvement in the housing conditions. And then the last part of that phrase is for housing and housing affordability. And it was really important from the outset for us as a team, for the staff, the community to understand that we're looking at the issues of housing across the spectrum of affordability. And so, yes, we are going to be looking at what is affordable housing, what is truly affordable housing, what is, mid-market affordable housing, luxury housing. It all impacts the ability for people to find a place that is attainable to them wherever their conditions are, whatever their financial situation is. And so, yes, there's an affordability component, but there's an overall market component that was very important to us to make sure that was involved in this conversation. And so we've used that, I think, as a framework, and kind of you can see how the different parts kind of fit together as we've been thinking about what housing our future is and how we've talked about it in the community. So there has been an awful lot of engagement that has gone into this over a year-long process. It started with stakeholder roundtables and interviews, January, February of last year. I think we conducted, and I think it was anywhere from 15 to 18. It could have even been more than that, stakeholder interviews to really get a lay of the land. We had community workshops. We had community open houses. We had conversations with municipal leaders and staff to understand from a municipal context, a more local, nuanced context. What are the housing challenges that each of your communities are facing? We had online engagement. We had community surveys up, looking at the housing needs and housing challenges, and then exploring the variety of strategies and what people could consider to be impactful strategies as we developed, that strategic framework and moved this forward. We culminated the community outreach really with a 30-day public comment period back in February, and there were meetings and online engagement with that. And what did that comment period look like? These numbers here reflect just the activity in that 30-day period. So this doesn't even reflect everything that we've done for the past year plus. But during that 30-day period, the staff of Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization went out and conducted in-person community feedback sessions, listening sessions, if you will. They had display boards, they had comment cards, and a presentation to orient anybody in the community, whether this was their first time getting engaged or they'd been engaged throughout the other workshops, to really talk about, here's what the plan says. Here's a lot of data behind the strategies that we're putting forth, and really wanting to get a sense of having a conversation of what are the strategies that people would be most excited about. What perspective would they be, interested in? Are they renters and they're looking for, programs that'll focus on renters, or home ownership? Or maybe they're a community development specialist and they're looking for capacity building strategies. All of those conversations were coming out of those feedback sessions. And while those were going on, there was social media posts. There were email campaigns, and you can see the reach of those. All of the social media and email campaigns were pointing folks to the website, where anybody who was not able to attend the listening sessions could still see the presentation, could still see all of the display boards, could see a draft of the plan. And then there was an online comment form, which you can see we received another 121 comments there online. And all told, with all of that activity in that 30-day period, we had over 15,000 touches, whether online or in person, of the community around the Housing Our Future plan. So what did we learn, from all of this? And we received a lot of comments, and it's as we're thinking about how do you synthesize all of this information, and you're reading through all of the comments, they really start to come down into, for us, in a meaningful way, into three themes that you see here. They were talking, a lot of the comments talked about who we're serving and who this plan should be serving. And as we're implementing this plan, who should we be thinking about? It's thinking about, there's a lot of great ideas in this plan. So how do things get done? How do we move the needle on getting things done? And what are some of the specific strategies that people were excited to see? And then who does the work? Again, kind of talking about that housing and community development ecosystem. Who should be at the table, helping and partnering with the county to get, to start to take action on these housing initiatives. So I'm not going to read this word for you. You can see this here, but on the who we're serving, I just want to highlight a few things. There was that whole spectrum really of folks saying we would think it should be focused on more affordable, deeply affordable housing units in that 30 to 80% area median income focus. There were maybe not just as many, but probably just as many people saying we need to be focusing on that middle market housing, that 80 to 120%, what they term workforce housing. I know that's not a friendly term to a lot of folks because everybody's in the workforce, right? But that's kind of sort of the colloquial term there. And so really focused on that. And so you can again see that comprehensive view. The community was taking that view as well. As far as how to get it done, people were already aware of the actions that this council has taken to dedicate ARPA dollars to kickstarting and launching housing programs here with that infusion of federal money. And so they wanted to continue to see that role and that alignment of those ARPA dollars kind of launching this plan, if you will. A lot of people talked about zoning and the need to look at land use regulations and how it might impact housing. Folks saying, hey, we want denser development, but we want it in appropriate areas. And other people saying, you know what, we don't need, all the development everywhere in the county. There are areas in the outlying parts of the county where we don't want to have development. And so both of those messages were coming through, loud and clear. And then on the who does the work side, there was a lot of conversation that we had. We had two community events hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, and we really appreciate them doing that for us, where we're talking to large employers throughout the county and throughout the region who recognize the impact of housing on their ability to attract and recruit talent, but also on their role as part of the magnetism, right? The part of the reason that this region and this county is so attractive is a lot to do with the jobs that are here. And so what role can they play in providing affordable and attainable housing? And a lot of conversation around the capacity of local nonprofits. You have some great nonprofits here already working, but how can we expand their capacity and bring more people into that realm to really, kind of build that? And a lot of times those local nonprofits are working very specifically in those communities around the county. And so it's really local leveraging that's desired there. And then finally, understanding that this is a regional issue. We spent some time talking to municipal leaders. People recognized that there are other local governments and local agencies and frankly, regional agencies and just folks outside of the county that are going to play a role in this, and that we need to be addressing that. And those are just some of the themes that came out of the community engagement. I highlight this here because I think another interesting aspect, and this happens with just about every plan that we do, housing strategy that we do, is people recognize that, yes, housing does impact everything. And there are a lot of tangent issues, a lot of intersecting issues that come up in these kinds of planning processes that people wanted to bring up. And so here are some of them, that are intersecting planning that we didn't deal with directly in the plan, but people are saying, hey, we recognize this. the need for utility and infrastructure to accommodate the growth in the appropriate places. Folks talking about, hey, it can't just be about housing production because that housing production and those people also come with traffic and transportation needs. It also has the ability to impact sustainability and environmental quality. But we also know that done right and done in the right locations, that housing can really create a sense of community and a sense of place. And so people were bringing these issues up within their public comments, and again, kind of showing how housing does touch everything in the community. And maybe some of these issues will then highlight other planning efforts in other departments and other, with other focus that you might want to consider down the road. So that was the public comment and kind of a high level of what we've heard and what was really framing the discussions over the last couple of months, both with the public and the steering committee. The next several slides, several of you will recognize these. We've showed these before throughout this planning process, but I thought it would be good to just touch on them quickly. Again, Charleston County, very large, very diverse, very diverse community, diverse ecologically, socially, demographically, employment. It's there, and all of it is impacting housing in a variety of ways. And it really points to the fact that this couldn't have been a cookie cutter kind of plan. It is a plan that, will have a menu of options that really will be able to be picked up and targeted to different parts of the community, depending on their needs, their experience, and kind of the context that those programs would be implemented. When we were thinking about housing demand, we asked questions and did analysis to help us understand what can current residents afford. How much does population and growth and employment growth impact the future demand of housing, and how much does future employment and wage growth impact the ability for new residents to move into certain types of housing, and how should they be thinking? How can they be approaching housing, whether as renters or homeowners? And so when we answer those questions and we do our demand analysis and we're reaching some preliminary conclusions, we're looking at 30 to 35,000 housing units, of demand over the next 10 years. That's a lot of units. It's perhaps, probably not even sustainable or attainable to actually do that, quickly or without any thought. And, we're hoping that the plan can help kind of point a direction to that. So that's a big number. It's a little bit daunting, but, to further break it down, we said, well, how do these 30 to 35,000 units break down from the affordability spectrum? And how can we let this understand and help us target the different strategies and programs and investments that we might want to consider, whether we're focused on that 80 to 120% area median income, or we're focused on that 30 to 60% area median income. You can see where the demand is along that kind of income spectrum. And, just real quickly, what we noticed and what we see an awful lot of times is 120 and on up area median income. The market starts to take care of those. There's still some significant demand on one end of that spectrum, but the idea is that the market is providing those units, maybe not as quickly or as much as they need to be, but they are there. So what does that mean for the other side of the affordability spectrum? It means that some sort of support, some sort of strategy, some sort of investment is needed to make housing at the bottom half of the affordability spectrum actually feasible. Whether that's promoting the private market or the nonprofit market to take advantage of those incentives and provide those units. And so again, it's really just sort of an understanding and a breaking down so that you can see where that demand is and where it might help focus what some of those strategies are. So that was the public input, just the real high level demand analysis and affordability analysis that went into this. And what this culminated into is a Housing Our Future document. I believe the plan itself might be 100 pages long. I think there's some more pages for the appendix there that has a lot of background information. But this plan really culminates into these 5 strategic goals, 27 strategies, all around the themes and the goals that you see here: expanding capacity, focus on renters, a focus on home ownership, reducing the barriers to adding supply. All of that comes into this framework and these 27 goals to help understand how you might focus, again, your energies and your resources. Well, 27 strategies, 5 goals, that's an awful lot to just say, okay, now what? And so we start to think about this from a perspective of implementation. And when we start to think about implementation, we're really looking at these 4 facets here. We're thinking about phasing and prioritization. We're thinking about the resources that are available now and that could be available in the future, and how to leverage those resources maybe to get additional resources. We're talking about governance and administration, and this is a lot of who's doing what and who's providing input. And then all of this kind of culminates into an implementation matrix that sets out the timing, sets out the community partners, sets out the interplay of the different strategies and how that moves forward. And each one of these goal areas has its own implementation chapter to kind of understand how you might line up for any one of these goals. Just real quickly, we're talking about phasing. We broke it down into near term, medium term, long term. When we're thinking near term, this is what we're really focused on right now. What could happen in the next, 1 or 2 years? And we're really focused on how can we build capacity? Are there long-term strategies like land banking or maybe statewide legislative activism of statewide legislative activities that would need to happen that have a long play, but you need to start them now because it's going to take a while? Are there initiating programs like with the ARPA funds? What are some things right now that we can do to launch into success and then build on that as we look to a longer frame? So we focused on those near-term priorities. And so this is a recommendation from us, saying, okay, you've got 27 strategies within the 5 goals, but what could you be doing in the next 2 years to look at policy tools, programs, and capacity building strategies? These are some of the early, they may not be necessarily the low-hanging fruit. They may not necessarily be the easiest thing to tackle, but there's some of the early things to start tackling in order to start to build that momentum again for success. And I'm not going to read them here, but they're here, and we're starting to synthesize this. And we spent a lot of time with the steering committee on this page and just talking about what, from their perspective, understanding, okay, how do we whittle this down even further or funnel it down even further to say these are the concrete steps that we think should be taken? You're going to hear some of that from Josh in just a few minutes. But when we think about this, we think about, and the technology stopped. We think about what we think the next steps could be to actually begin to focus on that. And these are the recommendations that we would have here to help turn those near-term priorities into action. And the first would be to establish an advisory committee. You've had a steering committee that has worked with us throughout this planning process. We've often found that having a body like that of professionals, of people that are really bought into advancing the plan can really go a long way to supporting the staff capacity that the county has in taking these actions. So however that advisory committee is constituted, we think it would be great if you had one. The other role that this two roles that this advisory committee could take. The first is working with staff to really outline that action plan that you see there on the screen. I'll talk about that in a minute. The second one is that oftentimes those advisory committees become important components to the governance and administration of funding and programs. And so ultimately, the county is going to set the county officials are going to set the policy of these are the way we want our programs to be implemented and our resources to go through. But then somebody needs to be kind of keeping their eye and their finger on the pulse of those programs and how that funding is getting spent and monitoring that funding for impact. And advisory committees and staff can really work hand in hand to do that. So I mentioned the action plan. This is where you really can start to identify additional plans, programs, resources, and start, crossing the T's and dotting the I's on what are the very next steps that are going to happen. And, there's those 12 near-term strategies. You may not want to or may not be able to tackle all 12 of them. So prioritizing even within those 12 near-term strategies, what the county should be doing really becomes the effort of that action plan. You start to build in performance measures. You start to build in monitoring. You start to build in kind of that governance and administration of these programs through this action plan. And you update this on a year by year basis. And it really allows you to see the success and kind of the moving the needle on that. The third recommendation is to consider the steering committee's recommendations. They're going to talk about an advisory committee and an action plan as well as good starting points. But they also they took the time over their last 2 meetings to think about those 12 near-term strategies and what are the very specifics. They started drilling down into what are some possible actions that could be put into an action plan within those 12 strategies. And so you'll hear some of that tonight. And I think considering how that might inform the action plan going forward would be another great step. And then the last thing I want to highlight here is that it is, when we think about success for the plan, we're really thinking about, yes, it's government resources, it's government capacity, it's government planning and investment, county government. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it's broader than that. It is a community plan. And so I'm starting to cultivate community champions, maybe from within the steering committee, maybe from other groups that have engaged with us very regularly, and having them step forward and be champions of pieces of this plan can help kind of create additional resources, spread the wealth, and spread the work around moving the needle. And I think that it's important for the county staff, the county officials to start reaching out into the community and explicitly tapping those community champions to help them come into the table more fully as that action plan gets developed. And so this was a high level. I hope you can appreciate, capsulizing over a 12-month period and a 100-page document into something that is digestible for you all. Hopefully you've had a chance to skim through the document. Hopefully this has kind of created a framework for our discussion, and I am very happy to answer any questions for you all. And thank you for the time.
Anyone have any questions at this point? Thank you, sir. Josh?
Okay. Mr. Chairman Sass and members of council, appreciate y'all giving us an opportunity to come talk about the Housing Steering Committee recommendation. We did submit a fairly lengthy recommendation, but this has been a real learning experience, especially as someone who is in the housing business, to see all different points of view when it comes to ways that we can address housing and housing affordability. A lot of what Mr. Carney mentioned, I'm not going to repeat, but one of the most important slides I think that he glossed over was AMI and what that means. This slide that you're seeing is on page 23 of the report, and we were really able to dig into what these ranges are and what it really means for people out in the community. 80 AMI is $66,000 and 120 is only $98,000. So when we're talking about workforce housing or affordable housing, this is the majority of people in Charleston. The median income is $67,000 right now. And you can look at the bottom of that page. That shows what you're qualifying for your monthly rent, or if you were to qualify for a mortgage, the areas that you're in. And in Charleston County, our February numbers, the median home price is $575,000. The median townhome is $373,000. So when we're talking about diversifying our housing inventory and needing housing across all price points, it really is congested when we're trying to accommodate everyone from that 30 AMI to even 150 AMI is getting difficult these days. And so this is one of the slides that we really focused in on as a steering committee when we were making our recommendations and who was really impacted by some of these policies. This is some statistics that came out from the South Carolina state legislature just this past week on where we are in our housing availability. A mortgage owner in Charleston County, 27% of those people are housing cost burden. For renters, we're talking about 54% of Charleston County renters are housing cost burden. Those making less than $35,000, which is your 30% AMI, that is 95.2% of people making less than $35,000 are housing cost burden. And in that bandwidth of 35 to 75,000, we're talking about 56.7% of Charleston County. So a majority of Charleston is hurting by the cost of housing and housing affordability. This is from that same study from the State House, and by 2030, Charleston is estimated to grow by another 5 to 15%. And most of our analysis says that that's guaranteed a double-digit growth by 2030. So how are we building capacity and getting to a place that we can be in the best position going forward? In our list of recommendations, we tried to bullet it out into a couple digestible topics, but a dedicated funding stream is very important. What y'all have shown with the ARPA money as a model for spending money wisely is something that the county should look into. But not only having a one-time funding like with ARPA, but creating a revolving loan fund so that money is coming back to the county and we're able to reinvest it in future projects. Sustaining the funding programs that were started with ARPA. Justin mentioned some of the streamlining from different departments, whether that be the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee or the Community Development, and just trying to make sure that all departments are working together. Zoning and land use regulations to diversify our housing stock. Missing middle is something that we talk a lot about, but it's something that we've gotten away from in our building. We tend to only build either single family or multifamily, but we could really do a lot in the affordability space if we were able to address duplexes, quadplexes, more townhomes, things of that nature. A regional housing authority was outlined in this report. We have 3 separate housing authorities in our region. The ability to consolidate and make those a unified department, we think would be a good space for the county to take a leadership role on. And then Justin also talked about the training and capacity building programs for nonprofit developers, for-profit developers. And there's a lot in the education space that we could do with regards to home ownership. We have found that housing is a great wealth generator, and we should all look at different ways that we can do this. The creation of a dedicated funding stream causes a lot of debate, and the truth is there's not one model that fits better than the other. We took a look at a lot of our peer communities that we're judged against and the type of housing strategies that they implement, and you have everything from a housing fund, a trust fund, but the dedicated funding stream is the important piece to making sure that any program is sustainable and can carry on. Ways that the county could look at revolving loan funds. Several of our municipalities and COGs across the state have revolving loan funds. That would be something that we could easily look at how other communities in South Carolina address the revolving loan fund and implement that with any future dollars that are going towards affordability. This is something that we shared with y'all, but when we were talking about doing a housing fund and doing a referendum, we polled Charleston County, and 61% somewhat are in favor of a housing trust fund. And with the right kind of education and communication with the residents, we feel that a housing fund would be a program that would have tremendous benefit going forward. But this all needs to start with an advisory board, as Justin mentioned. Putting this plan into an action plan is the logical next step. This is a very good comprehensive plan, but how do we put these programs into place? And as a steering committee, when we began working, and we had always envisioned the Greenbelt program. That's been a highly successful model with an advisory board. It has a sustainable funding stream. But looking at how the Greenbelt and ARPA could somehow morph together into a housing program is a way that gap financing and the county can have a role in addressing our affordability issues. We mentioned education and training. And that can look different ways, but allowing for nonprofit, for-profit developers to get the opportunity for capacity building, that's going to be a big step in our ability to really dial in on some of these housing costs and meet some of those projections that Justin was mentioning. You know, for our region, just to give you a little bigger perspective, you know, by 2030, we're estimating we need 40 to 45,000 units across the Tri-County. So that's a big number that we have to start to chip away at. And that can be through the creation of housing, but also we need to look at home ownership programs. We talk a lot about displacement, but displacement occurs amongst the non-homeowner folks. And when we're looking at areas that have seen great displacement, and by great, you look at the natural disasters that have happened in out west with the wildfires, or in Louisiana or Texas with their flooding, the displacement occurs because these people evacuate, their homes have been damaged, and there weren't funding programs in place to help them with refurbishment or to get back into the home ownership market. And so as an area that is naturally disaster prone, we should try to get ahead and think of, you know, how are we prepared for housing, not just under current conditions, but, you know, some natural catastrophe that may happen. That wasn't something that we dug in on in the steering committee, but is something that we should talk about regionally. And we really appreciate the opportunity to have been a part of this. This was, like I said, a tremendous learning curve for a lot of different folks. How you assembled the steering committee, bringing people from different points of view. We were really able to have a holistic discussion on the property issues that we're all facing, the affordability issues that we're facing, and we fully support the Housing Our Future plan, and just look forward to any future work that may occur. So, Mr. Sass, I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. Really appreciate everything y'all have done. Your committee has done a good job. Mr. Carney, y'all have done a great job too. It's a great collaborative effort. I've read the materials that we were given a few weeks ago, but it's good to get a little to hear from y'all and to hear a little bit more about what y'all stress. I think that's real important to all of us. Does anybody have a question for tonight? Okay. I want to thank y'all very much. Y'all have done an incredible job, and now we have to go to work. Y'all have laid the groundwork for us to do some work. Mr. Moody?
I did have a couple questions, if you don't mind, and just maybe for Mr. Dix and Mr. Carney to think about. I was pleased to see the pilot training for nonprofits. There was a story in the Post and Courier last week. I think Richland United Way and their 180 place equivalent bought an old apartment and hotel, and they're turning it into housing. So I'm happy to see that those folks are putting their money where their mouth is. That's encouraging. But the question I have for you guys is I still want to know, I guess, where do you put this stuff? And Mount Pleasant has a moratorium. They don't want it, which puts pressure on everybody else. The city of Charleston has lined Church Creek with apartments. They're lining Beast Ferry Road with apartments, and my constituents are just sick of it, I went to a meeting a couple weeks ago about the Northbridge Publix Shopping Center, which is entitled for hundreds of apartments, and they wanted to throw me through the glass, and it's not even a county project. They're done. They don't want it. But I agree with you. We have an affordability problem. I mean, 70-something% of people acknowledge we have an affordability problem. But when you ask those same people, can we work on that problem in your community? The answer is no. Not no. Heck no. We don't want it anywhere near us. This council has even turned away planning development requests that would add density and things like that in areas because all neighborhoods, rich, small, white, black, everybody comes out against these things. So where do we put them? You don't have to answer it, but that's what's in my head, because I've got to go back to my constituents. Even the city of Charleston is going to that developer has every right to do what they're doing at Northbridge. Every right. It's fully entitled. People say, well, just change the zoning then. No, you can't do that. You sue. You get sued. You lose, and you still get apartments. But they're just sick of it. So that's what I want to leave you with. That is, where does this stuff go?
We're thinking about it, and we'll talk. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Moody. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dix. Thank you, Mr. Carney. We really appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Great job. Thank you all both. Our next item, public hearing, the annual action plan.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. regarding a substantial amendment to the PY 2021 Annual Action Plan for the Home ARP Allocation Plan.
Anybody to speak on that? No? Nobody? Okay, thank you. Next thing is public comments.
12 people signed up. The first person is Betty Neerman, and then Claudette Hart.
Hi, Ms. Newman. Good to see you.
My name's Betty Neerman, 104 Nightingale Manor, North Charleston. Chairman Sass and council members, I was able to attend last Wednesday's meeting of the Charleston County Housing Steering Committee. It was exciting to hear the back and forth between the steering committee members, of which there are a few here tonight, and the consultants you hired that created the Housing Our Future plan. I heard there were to be no major changes to the Housing Our Future plan, just an update to the elementary school teacher salary to reflect local salaries. The salary change, while not a major change to the plan, moves an elementary school teacher from the moderate income or workforce category to the low income category. I find it very interesting that this was also one of the slides that Josh prepared. Think about that for a minute. An elementary teacher in the low income bracket in Charleston County. How many teachers do we have in this bracket that struggle to afford their housing and do what they have been called to do? We all know teachers do not teach for money. It's a calling for most of them. The teachers, firefighters, police men and women, food and beverage workers, and so many more in our community need our help now. I have a dear friend who is renting a room for almost $700 a month because she cannot afford the rent for a one-bedroom apartment that is within a reasonable drive from her work. I have a son who is still living with us, whose hourly wage is greater than $15 an hour, working full-time, and cannot afford an apartment within 30 minutes of his place of work. We are asking that you do what the Housing Our Future plan and the steering committee are recommending, which is to create a housing trust fund with a professional advisory committee and a dedicated source of funding that will finally move the county forward toward the creation of more affordable housing. We're not asking council to build any homes. There are professionals that do that. With the creation of the Housing Trust Fund, council then can focus on the other needs of the county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Claudette Hart, Charles Hayward.
Hi, I'm Claudette Delegard Hart, and I live at 183 West Poplar Street in Charleston. I'm a member of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, and I speak to you regarding the Housing Our Future plan. Please consider this plan along with the Housing Trust Fund and a dedicated source of funding. I worked for 16 years as a social worker, 8 years as an educator, and I finally retired as a probation officer. As a state employee, we are not paid a very decent living wage in comparison to other states. This is why I've invested in all areas of the spectrum. Me, along with social workers, teachers, hospitality workers, are living below 80% AMI. We need affordable, sustainable, and obtainable housing too. Please consider the Housing Trust Fund and the Housing Our Future plan as a means to enhance these very vital persons' lives and allow them to have a decent place to live in our community as they provide service to our community. This community cannot function without these professionals, and these professionals cannot function in this community if the cost of living isn't right. Please do right now.
Thank you, Ms. Hart.
Mr. Hayward, Karen Novak Forrest.
Charles Hayward, the Johns Island address, 4037 Gift Boulevard. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, I'll ask them who are present to stand. I'd like to present to you and this council some 1,100 letters from last night's Nehemiah Action, all in support of the Housing Our Future plan, asking you to, this council, to establish that plan to include a recurring source of income. In addition to these 1,100 letters, some 1,300 attendees last night from the larger community. We'd like to multiply that factor about 7.5 to say tonight we want to add 10,000 additional touches to those 15,000 that this council saw tonight. It was an exciting time to know the work of the Housing Our Future Task Force, the committee, the steering committee, to see that this council is on the verge of doing the right thing right now to move our regional needs for housing, affordable housing. And so please accept these letters as the larger community in support of the Housing Our Future plan.
Thank you very much. If you would just leave them with our attorney, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Karen Forrest.
Karen signed up for me, William Hamilton, best friends of Low Country Transit. The reason that people don't want apartments near where they live is because this council and the Council of Governments in Carter has utterly failed to make progress on public transit. In 2016, we won $600 million to build the bus rapid transit line from Somerville to Charleston. This county will take more time than any government in the history of Earth anywhere has ever taken to build a bus rapid transit system. This is the slowest system project timeline in the history of the human race because people don't want to build it. Because you don't care whether the poor people are mobile, because it's useful for them to be immobile, so they won't show up here. Now, it is way past time to spend the money that was allocated by the voters of this county to build a rapid transit system from Somerville, which is in Charleston County now, all the way to downtown Charleston. It is time to set aside the ridiculous idea that a dog walking park under I-26 should displace our transit line and leave our buses in traffic. People will not build the housing if they have to fight traffic. Your system of transportation is failing. It will get worse. I will say one thing more, and I'll be done. We're currently working, unfortunately, on the school system, which is likewise perennial, chronic disaster. We don't work on schools. We do affordable housing. We do public transit and the living wage. But the situation in the school system was so bad, we had to step up and help. We have been talking to teenagers all over the area, smart kids, Academic Magnet High School, creative arts, valedictorians, kids on the honors roll. You know what they tell us? They tell us they're going to leave. They say they're not worried about the school system. They're not worried about the future because they're going to leave Charleston. Your future is about to pack up and go. And the fact that we're slow and we can do another study, and this is the South and the expectations are low, is simply no longer adequate. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
Rajab Purathatham.
My name's Rajiv Purushottam. I'm a small residential contractor and a resident of Ferguson Village on James Island. In Ferguson Village, there are a lot of older homes and a lot of older people. Our community is not unique in this. I came here tonight to learn how I can help one of my neighbors who's 86 years old, lives by herself, and has recently been confined to a wheelchair. My neighbor needs accessibility alterations, egress ramps, as well as the addition of an HVAC system that's only heat in her sitting room as an ancient gas burner. This is one case where a small investment can make a huge improvement. I urge the council to see these kinds of improvements as low-hanging fruit. Should be obvious that the most affordable housing is housing that already exists. My comments to the council would be to, one, prioritize funding into improvements in existing homes, make these funds easily accessible to those in needs. Senior citizens with no computers need to be reached. And three, make it easier for contractors such as myself and local tradesmen to help families in need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Jackson and then Luann Rosenwig.
I'm Carol Jackson. I live on Patterson Avenue in James Island. I'm here just to thank you and celebrate with you the first item on your official agenda for Women's History Month. But it occurred to me that maybe we should be putting on our minds and our hearts the future and the current events that involve women in our county. So I went to the library today for another purpose, but I picked up two pieces of information that I think are very emblematic of thinking about those two opportunities, women's future. Thursday night at James Island Elementary at 1872 South Grimble Road, the elementary school is hosting a Women in Science Night, and it's for girls who are in elementary school on James Island, and they will actually mingle with women who are in science. As the proud mom of the department chair for the College of Charleston Human Science School, my daughter didn't even have a role model in science until she reached graduate school, and she didn't even know she liked science until she went to college because nobody had ever encouraged her. So I think it's that kind of program that the county can easily support. The other one is less positive. Tri-County Speaks is a 24/7 hotline dealing with sexual assault issues that our population, unfortunately, is suffering. And I'd like to read the number, 843-745-0144. Tri-County Speaks is supported by the county. I hope you continue to do that with all of your public funds that you can put through to good purpose. They provide a full-service crisis intervention and case management, support groups, all the things that women need to feel are available in their community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luann Rosenwig, Brendan Patman.
Hello, Luann Rosenzweig, 365 Sugarcane Way, Mount Pleasant. CAJM would like to commend County Council for the investments made with ARPA funds in affordable housing. You have acknowledged a true crisis in our community and responded. We also commend the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, as well as the consultants who have, at your direction, analyzed the problem in depth and brought forward a comprehensive plan to address it. We urge you to approve that plan and to move forward immediately to fully implement it. Step one is to set up a sustainable and ongoing funding source. As you recently experienced, well-intentioned plans fail when adequate funding is not secure. The state of South Carolina recently backed out of its plan for support for affordable housing due to a lack of funds, leaving you to fill in the gaps with ARPA funds. But those funds are ending. You still have about $9 million in ARPA funds that can be invested in affordable housing through a housing trust fund. We urge you to use the remaining ARPA funds to establish a housing trust fund and then to include an ongoing line item in your budget for an annual investment of $10 million in that fund. As Greenville has proven, a housing trust fund will leverage those dollars at a rate of $26 to every single dollar invested and result in more homes more quickly for all of the citizens here who need it.
Thank you.
Brendan Patman, Deborah Abgor-Tabby.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brendan Patman. I live on Ananap Boulevard in Mount Pleasant. Anyway, I am concerned about affordable housing. I got involved with some charities about, probably like the Christmas right before COVID, 2019, when I had a couple of extra hotel free nights in a chain called Radisson where I rarely use them anymore. So I offered them on Facebook to anybody in need. So I was able to house on Christmas, arriving on Christmas Day, and then 2 nights checking out the 27th, a homeless man who lives in the woods outside Somerville behind a Walmart, and allow him to get rest in a real bed and a shower and a couple other things. And then I've had other people ask me, and sometimes I've been able to use my hotel free points to house people in need for a few nights, and even sometimes I've even had to use my own money to rent them a room for a couple nights. But this is only a stopgap measure because even cheap hotels, including tax, are $70 or $80 a night around here, and it's not sustainable. And so I do want to see permanent or long-term housing solutions for these people who are living in the different wooded areas and in their own cars. They say there's also a homeless community behind the Walmart on Rivers Avenue in North Charleston. And what else? If anybody else has a few hotel points like on Choice or Wyndham or IHG/Holiday Inn, you can talk to me later, and I can help you get a free room for a couple nights for a person in need. But again, it's only a stopgap measure, like on a cold night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Abgor-Tabby, Michael German.
I'm Deborah Agbo-Tabby. I live at 1459 Woodhill Terrace, Charleston, South Carolina, 29412. That's on James Island. I'm very pleased to see that the Housing Our Futures plan recommendation to set up a housing trust fund and to make sure to provide a permanent funding source for the trust fund. I'm here today in support of the plan and the recommendation of a trust fund and a permanent funding source for that trust fund. But today, I also want you as council persons to know that for me and my family and others, this crisis is real and it is urgent. And my family, started out living with me, And now they are still 3 generations living in one household just to make sure that they're contributing and making sure that they have housing available for them. But even so, we're talking of salaries and Social Security that's less than $1,000 a month. So they really don't have a whole lot available. Also, not just my family, but, I have a friend specifically. She's a single parent with 3 children, 3 young children. And first she started out as a student, and living under the stress of severe housing with her family, helping her out. And then after graduation, she moved into an entry-level social work position, but still, on the lower end, and so in terms of salary, and then with the continuing stress of housing and insecurity. So I urge you to adopt the plan, start the work and the strategies to make the changes now and for the future. Make the trust fund a priority, make permanent funding essential for that work, and then know that not all of your constituents are asking to not put it in my backyard. There are some of us who are speaking louder. They may be speaking louder, but there are some of us who know that a real solution helps all of us. Thank you so much.
Michael German, Diamond Curry.
Good evening, Charleston County representatives. My name is Michael German. I live at 1707 Snowden Road in Snowden area of Mount Pleasant. Firstly, I want to say I stand in solidarity with the housing issues in Charleston County, and I employ you to do whatever is necessary to make housing affordable for all. But the real reason I'm here again is sewer. Approximately 3 meetings ago, I heard Mr. Pryor say we need to move additional monies to connect those low-hanging fruits, those people that are in close proximity to the sewer lines. Since then, nothing has been done. When are you going to make that issue or that a part of your agenda so you can vote on it one way or the other to move the money that's necessary to connect those people? I went to Mount Pleasant Town Waterworks meeting last night, and they're ahead of the game. They are just waiting on you to make that decision to do the matching funds. I can't understand. After 25 years, I'm still standing there having this conversation. Why or what is the delay now in you putting that on the agenda to make this happen? You're the holdup. And I thought that something would have been taken care of weeks ago. When is going to be on the agenda, and how soon are you going to make this happen so we can improve our quality of life? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Diamond Curry, Seminella Holmes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Diamond Curry on behalf of the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce at 4922 O'Hare Avenue. I'd like to start off by thanking Council for allowing staff and the consultants to work so hard on the Charleston County Housing Our Future Plan. We recognize the time and resources that was put into this effort. The Chamber has been a huge advocate for attainable housing, and we continue to support Charleston County Council in not only adopting this plan, but taking the steps necessary to see these action items come to fruition. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And then the last one is Sam Unella Holmes. All right.
All right. Thank you. That's the end of our public comments. I'm going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Freedom of Information Act.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to news media and persons requesting notification.
Thank you, ma'am. Minutes of March 7th, 2023. Moved by Mr. Moody, seconded by Mr. Pryor. Any additions, questions, deletions? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. I have missed on the pledge and the prayer. Could we have the prayer, Mr. Reverend Middleton? And would Mr. Smalls lead us in the pledge?
God, our Father, we thank you, we bless you, we praise your name, and we bless you for this Charleston County Council, our chairperson, Mr. Sass, and we thank you, God, for our administrator, for all of those who work within county government. We bless you now for the works of the hands of those who continue to move this county forward, and for just the foresight to do the things that would benefit all citizens of Charleston County. We ask, God, your continued providence in the lives of those who are serving this county on all levels, and we ask continuously your guidance, your direction, your favor, and your interposition of wisdom so that we might be able to do the right thing at all times. This we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Recognitions and resolutions.
Approval.
All in favor? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. I'd like to recognize Christian Salisbury for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the first time that I've ever made a presentation to County Council, so thank you, Mr. Darby, for the opportunity to do so. Mr. Darby asked me to put together a presentation for you about the women who have served on Charleston County Council and who have served Charleston County Council. So here we go. The first woman elected to Charleston County Council was Marjorie Amos Frazier. She served from 1975 until 1980. She was the first woman and the first African-American woman elected to Charleston County Council. Once she left county council, I've heard it said she was a one-woman social services department, and that is just amazing to me. Next, we have Betsy Carrison. She served from 1995 until 1991. She was actually the first chairwoman of Charleston County Council and the first vice chairwoman. Next, we have Linda Lombard. I think most of us of a certain age who have been in Charleston County a long time would recognize her more like this, as she encouraged us all to please get out of Charleston County. Hurricane Hugo is coming right towards us. Next, we have Ann Alford. Ms. Alford, after she served on county council, was very instrumental in helping us with the plantings at the Larimore Park downtown. Next, we have Ruth Glover. Ruth Glover, when she left county council, went on to serve us on the Charleston County Election Commission. Toy Estes was on council when I joined the county council office. She served from 1999 until 2002. She was an advocate for property rights. I remember that about her. Oh, I'm going the wrong way here. Cindy Floyd, also likewise an advocate for property rights. She has served on our planning commission ever since she left county council. She's currently the chairperson of the planning commission, and she's done great work in the land use planning for Charleston County. Carolyn Conlon took up the office after her husband served on county council. She was one of the two people who only served 2 years here on county council because her term was shortened due to the implementation of single member districts. Colleen Condon was on council a long time, 2005 to 2016. While she was here, she was instrumental in our recycling program. She was a budget hawk. She read the budget line by line and had a lot of input on those things. We all know and love and remember Miss Johnson. She served with us for 11 years. She was the vice chair of county council, again, very strong on environmental management, rural issues. And then we have Ms. Honeycutt, who currently serves with us and is our vice chair lady. And then we have the former clerks of county council. We started with Caroline Rugheimer, Sarah Brebart, Evelyn Bonham, and my boss and mentor, Beverly Craven. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful job. Thank you.
Very nice presentation. Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. Committee recommendations with first reading of the ordinance. Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Boykin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
An ordinance amending the West Charleston Business Center Plan Development Zoning District PD 24B to West Charleston Business Center Plan Development Zoning District PD 24C.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I move that we take up items 5 through 7G. Vote for approval.
Moved by Mr. Pryor and seconded by
7G.
Mr. Moody.
All right.
We want to leave.
7G comes off, right?
Okay, we'll do 7G separately. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Last item, 7G, Sheriff's Office Competitive Pay Funding.
Move for committee recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Boykin and seconded by Mr. Moody. Is there any discussion?
Can you restate the committee recommendation just for the record?
The committee recommends that council appropriate transfers within the fiscal year 23 budget up to $3.8 million on an ongoing basis as needed and as requested by the Charleston County Sheriff in support of the Sheriff's Office Competitive Pay Plan to be used to cover any deficits in the event the sheriff spends the entire allocation of her fiscal year 23 budget.
Any further questions? No more discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you, Mr. Moody, Mr. Darby. We look alike now? Thank you, Mr. Darby. Public comments, Mr. Werman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, look, I think I want to commend, I maybe should have done this while he was here, but want to commend Mr. Carney and the folks at Development Strategies, as well as the folks on the committee and as well as our staff for all the work they've done. Obviously, I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. I was certainly happy to hear that after we took things back to the public after the draft was out, it sounds like folks got it right because the substance really didn't change, it sounds like. So that is good. I realize it's daunting. I would agree with Councilman Moody. There are some big issues in addition to location. Finding funding is going to be a big issue, and hopefully we can have a discussion about all of the options rather than maybe some that we've been focusing on for the past several years. But I think this is a huge opportunity. I don't know. I know we talked about the next steps. I don't know when this comes to council. I don't know if staff needs something from council before any of those steps come back. But in any event, I certainly hope we're able to take those up shortly and have any discussions we need to have about the plan overall. But again, just wanted to thank everybody and say I think we've got a really good plan and looking forward to get it implemented. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Pryor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several items. First one, I'd like for us to, Ms. Salisbury, maybe contact the Military Magnet Academy and let us do a resolution for them being 3-time high school champs and I think 1A basketball. So I'd like to get with them and maybe have them come out and give them a certificate each like we normally do.
Yes, sir.
From Military Magnet. I think that would be something good. Second thing is, I know we're getting into budget, and this year is going to be pretty tight from what I understand, and it may require a tax increase. And so what I would like for staff to do is bring us, 2 budget we can choose from, one without a tax increase and one with a millage increase, so that way we will know what we have to cut, what we have to, not duplicate service, but eliminate some services because with the way the economy is and the way things are coming, I think the numbers didn't come in the way we expected. And so I think we should have two choices and then let 5 people decide what they want to do, not just one choice. And lastly, just me personally, I don't know if anybody else want to join along, but I want to ask Ms. Ham to get me a letter to go to the Justice Department to investigate what's going over at the Charleston County Jail, because over the last couple of years or so, we have had a number of homicides. And with that article coming out in the paper news on yesterday in the paper this morning, I've gotten several calls because this jail sits right in my district. And so it's ruled as a homicide. And, we had somebody pushed over a rail, or they said jumped over a rail, we don't know. And then we just had somebody, a 50-year-old gentleman, that died into the custody because he didn't get the right medication, and he was in for shoplifting, which really, behooves me why he wouldn't even get a PR bond. But, I think it's time we take some actions. And so I'm going to ask Ms. Ann for you. If anybody wants to put their name to the letter, they can. But I think we should, because the coroner stated that this is a homicide. She's investigating this as a homicide. And so maybe the civil rights may have been, violated, by not being allowed to have a shower, denied the medications. And so I would ask if anybody want to join and send this letter, just let Ms. Ham know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Mr. Boykin?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to recognize and give thanks and my appreciation to all of the women who serve as part of our Charleston County workforce and gives us the great service they do each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. Ms. Honeycutt?
Nothing, thank you.
Reverend Milton?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Moody?
Nothing, Mr. Sass. Thank you.
Mr. Darby?
Ditto to Mr. Boykin's statement.
Mr. Kowalski?
Just a few things. I wanted to honor the memory of Judge Richard Fields, who passed away at the age of 103. He became a county judge the same year I entered, passed the bar, and began practicing here. And he embodied everything you wanted in a judge. Everybody that appeared in front of him at the time was the old county courthouse in conditions often of chaos, and everybody felt respected and valued, whether you were a criminal defendant, whether you were a young attorney like me or an experienced attorney, the people that worked there. And I think it would be something worthy of us. He was the first African-American judge, as I understand it, and it was a county judge. I'd like us to think of something worthy to commemorate who he was. And we have a brand new courthouse now, but the fact that he's living proof that it's much fancier now, and it's not the circumstances and the surroundings and the value of the building you're in, but the people who inhabit it. And he embodied what a judge should be to all of us. And some commemoration, so his presence is still there to affect what goes on now, I think would be worthy of us considering in some way. I don't know what that would be, but I leave it to our collective wisdom to do that. And in Sullivan's Island, Roy Williams passed away, who was our historian on the island and a longtime teacher at Wando and a great person. And I'd just like to comment a little bit. I listened to the housing, and have voted millions of dollars and maybe put up billions of dollars for new roads and highways. And I echo what Councilman Moody said about the thousands of new homes adding to that. And I just wonder sometimes how, to feed the homeless and house people who don't have homes is a worthy, no better service of government than that. But how massive subsidies can affect the cost of housing is like catching the wind. We all have lived here for a while and seen the values go up. All the things we do to produce more roads, highways, and jobs, everything we've done for good, it's created the price of houses going up. And nothing we do by subsidizing is going to affect that. I just wonder how we affect and what government can do to affect the cost of housing. I know when I first got married, my wife was a school teacher. She was able to buy a home at $10,000 on Isle of Palms. And my house in Sullivan's Island was $96,000. And all the other things that have gone on has created that cost of housing. How are we going to affect, by doing all this, what is that going to do to bring down the price of housing? Just like when student loans got subsidized, the price of going to college kept on going up and up to now it's out of reach for anybody if you don't have those. And I wonder about the same effect, and I'm saying that we've taken under advisement. I had no final opinion. I thank you all for the hard work, but again, I caution how subsidies, how that gets like catching the wind. How are you going to affect the rising costs? Everything we do with roads and developments is going to make the price of homes go up and up. And that's what the final analysis, what makes our homes unaffordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaprowski. Mr. Administrator?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Ms. Ham? Ms. Salisbury?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to announce for the public and for county council that starting tomorrow, our council chambers is going to be under renovation, and that should take most of the month of April, the rest of this month and the most of the month of April. So our meetings will be held at North Charleston City Hall Council Chambers. That's at 2500 City Hall Lane in the city of North Charleston.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll remind us
I'll
many
remind y'all.
times.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you and everyone else who put together that workshop for us last Friday. We had a great tour first. We got to see the African American Museum, International African American Museum, and then we went and had our workshop in Mount Pleasant. And we got some good discussions, and we also got to spend a little time together, which I think was good for everyone. So I want to thank everybody for participating, and I hope we can have another one of those. I think it's worthwhile. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Seconded? Second. Thank you. We adjourn.